I'll never forget the way the living room looked that night. Dim, quiet, and so still you could hear the fridge humming in the kitchen. Lydia was curled up on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, her eyes rimmed red. I stepped through the front door and froze. Our wedding gifts were still stacked against the far wall, untouched, some still wrapped in silver paper. We had only been back from the honeymoon for 2 weeks. I set my duffel bag down, my shoulders still stiff from the trip out to the platform. Lydia, I asked, what's going on? She blinked at me like I'd startled her. We need to talk. That was all it took. My stomach dropped straight through the floor. No one says, we need to talk, unless they're about to punch you in the ribs with something you didn't see coming. I didn't expect you until morning, she added quietly, wiping her nose with a crumpled tissue. I caught an earlier ferry. We wrapped up the dive work ahead of schedule. I stepped closer. Are you okay? She hesitated, then looked down. I've been seeing Daniel. At first, I didn't get it. Daniel who? She didn't answer. Your ex, I said, my voice rising. She nodded. There was a long silence, the kind that stretches a moment into something permanent. I took a step back, like I needed more air to breathe. It's not what you think, she said quickly. I didn't sleep with him. We've been talking. And a few times, we met up. I laughed. It wasn't because it was funny. It was because everything suddenly felt so surreal, like I'd walked into someone else's life. You've been talking to your ex. The one you said was a closed chapter. I'm confused, Thomas. She was crying now, her hands trembling. I thought getting married would clear everything up, but it hasn't. I still think about him. I still feel something. So what was I? I asked, my voice cold. Your trial run? A way to test your feelings. No, she said too fast. I need time to figure it out. Before I can really commit. You already committed, I said. You wore the dress. You said the vows. You signed the papers. She sobbed into her hands, but I felt nothing. Not anger. Not grief. Just a hollow quiet. I sat down across from her, pulled out my phone, and started Googling divorce lawyers in Seattle. She looked up. What are you doing? I'm giving you the space you asked for, I said without looking at her. You're not married to 2 people at once. So if you want to explore your feelings, you can do that. Alone. Thomas. I didn't mean. I'm not going to fight for someone who's already thinking about leaving, I said, standing up again. You made your choice. I'm just making it official. She looked stunned. Maybe she expected me to yell, throw something, beg her not to go. But I didn't. I just went to the bedroom, grabbed a pen and paper, and started writing a list. Lawyer, lease review, storage unit. Outside, the sky was starting to lighten with early morning blue. A new day, whether I wanted it or not. I looked at her one more time before walking away. Thomas, she whispered. I'm sorry, but I wasn't listening anymore. Mark showed up the next afternoon, jet-lagged and wide awake. I met him at the curb in front of our apartment, and the second he saw me, he dropped his bag and pulled me into one of those rough, wordless hugs that only best friends can give. She really did it, he said, pulling back, disbelief written all over his face. I nodded once. Yeah, she's upstairs, packing. Mark looked toward the building. Want me to go up there and make things real uncomfortable? I half smiled. Nah, I've got it handled. We walked inside together, and as soon as we stepped through the door, Lydia looked up from the floor, where she was folding a sweater into a suitcase. Her eyes flicked to Mark. You flew in from Dubai for this? I'd fly in from the moon if it meant watching you move out, he said coolly. Lydia winced but didn't argue. Can I just say something? She asked, her voice quieter now. No, Mark said flatly, crossing his arms. I raised a hand. Let her talk. Lydia stood, brushing her hands down her jeans. I know what I did was selfish. But Thomas, you weren't emotionally available. Not really. You keep everything in. You bottle things up, and I didn't know how to reach you anymore. Mark snorted. So cheating's the new form of communication? It wasn't cheating, she said sharply. We just talked. Mark stepped forward, but I touched his arm. It's fine. I turned to Lydia. I've heard enough. You want to paint this as a misunderstanding, but it wasn't. You chose him. While our wedding gifts were still sitting unopened in this room. She looked like she might cry again. I wasn't sure what I was doing. I thought I needed space. Time. I thought. That marriage vows were a draft? I cut in. That you could edit them whenever you had second thoughts? Mark moved to the corner, quietly started separating the boxes. His pile, her pile, he said under his breath, beginning to stack gifts in 2 rows. Thomas, blender or toaster? Toaster. Cool. It's yours. Lydia blinked at him. Seriously. Seriously, Mark said, lifting a box labeled crockpot. We're doing this now. No point pretending we're splitting a life when you already walked out of it. She turned back to me. You don't have to be this cold. I shook my head. That's where you're wrong. I do. She bit her lip. What happens next? You pack. You leave. And we both move on. Her face crumpled for a second, but she nodded and turned back to her things. She took the suitcase, the box of clothes, and a small duffel of toiletries. It was barely 2 weeks ago we walked into this place as husband and wife. Now she was leaving like a guest who overstayed. At the door, she looked back one more time. I'm going to figure this out. I promise. I didn't answer. And neither did Mark. The door shut with a soft click. Mark let out a breath. Well, he said, turning to me, that went smoother than expected. Yeah, I muttered, because it was already over. The next morning, I was making coffee when there was a knock at the door. Not a hesitant tap. A firm, 3-beat knock with purpose. I opened it and found Robert standing there in a pressed jacket and jeans. Lydia's dad. The ex-Navy commander. The last person I expected to see. Can I come in? He asked. I nodded and stepped aside. She's not here, I said. I know, he said. I didn't come for her. He walked in like he'd done it 100 times before, though we'd never been close. Always polite, always formal. He took a seat at the kitchen table without being asked, then looked up at me. You holding up? I blinked. Trying. He nodded. Good. Because you didn't do anything wrong. I sat across from him. You siding with me? I'm not siding with anyone, he said. I'm calling out what's true. What Lydia did, what she's doing, is foolish. I didn't say anything. I just poured us both a cup of coffee. We sat there in silence for a minute, the kind of silence that feels solid, like it is weight. She told me she needed space, I said finally. That she wasn't sure. Robert shook his head. Hell of a time to get unsure. 2 weeks into a marriage. I let out a humorless laugh. That's what I said. He took a slow sip, then looked me dead in the eyes. You deserve to know something. About Daniel. I looked up. Back when they dated, Robert said, she didn't know he cheated on her. Once. Maybe twice. She thought he was perfect. I kept it to myself because she was already heartbroken when it ended. No point in piling on. Why are you telling me now? I asked. Because now it matters. Because she's chasing something she's too blind to see clearly. And you're the one getting hurt in the process. I rubbed my eyes. Appreciate the honesty. Wish it had come sooner. He gave me a long look. She'll crash, Thomas. It may take weeks or months, but she's going to find out the truth, and it'll hit her hard. And when it does, I want you to know, you're not alone in this. You've got me. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. We shared a quiet moment. Him nursing his coffee, me staring at the steam rising from mine. She didn't just lose a husband, Robert said. She lost the best man I ever saw her bring home. After he left, I checked my phone. Missed calls from Lydia's mom. A few messages from mutual friends trying to stay neutral. One even said, you should have fought for her harder. I didn't reply. Because people don't always understand that letting go isn't weakness. Sometimes, it's the strongest damn thing you can do. Back at the office, things felt off. I'd only been back 2 days when my boss, Ron, called me into his office. He wasn't a touchy-feely guy, strict, practical, the kind of man who ate the same sandwich for lunch every day, but he looked up at me with something close to concern. Thomas, shut the door. I did. He motioned for me to sit. I heard about the situation at home. Lydia, you okay? I hesitated. Getting there. He nodded. Listen, you've been one of our most dependable engineers. Never late, never missed a tied window, always got the job done. So I'm saying this as a guy who respects the hell out of you. Take some time. Ron. He held up a hand. Paid leave. 2 weeks minimum. Full pay. No arguments. I blinked. You serious? You don't need to be out on the water with your mind someplace else. That's how people get hurt. He leaned back in his chair. Also, something else. I braced myself. Daniel Hartman's name came up in the last project briefing. That hit harder than I expected. He's one of the environmental consultants on the Cedar Coast project, Ron continued. We didn't know the personal connection when the contract came through, but now that we do, he trailed off. I'm not putting you in that room. I swallowed. I appreciate that. You want back on that job after your break, it's yours. But if not, I'll find something else. After that meeting, I left the office early and went straight to the gym. It was the only place where my head shut up. I pushed through a brutal hour of weights, then hit the treadmill until my shirt was soaked through. For the first time in days, I felt something that wasn't hollow. That night, I didn't go home right away. I sat in my truck, scrolling through social media like a fool. And there it was, Lydia, smiling with Daniel, standing in front of a coffee shop, her hand resting on his chest. The caption read, New Beginnings. Learning to follow my heart. The comments were full of hearts and clapping emojis. I didn't read them all. I just locked my phone and sat there in the dark for a while, letting the hurt roll through me and out the other side. The next morning, I opened a blank file on my laptop and started outlining a new project, something I'd been toying with for months. A wave energy design that could cut costs and improve output by 20% if I got the prototype right. It was ambitious, risky, and exactly what I needed. I dove into the calculations, research materials, drafted a rough sketch. By the end of the week, I had a proposal. I wasn't sleeping much, but I didn't care. I was moving again, breathing again. Lydia was out there posting curated pieces of a new life. But I was building something real, something that didn't need anyone's approval but mine. It was Luke who started filling in the cracks. He worked with me on a different marine site just outside Tacoma, a quiet guy. Lydia's younger brother, always kept to himself. We hadn't spoken much since the split, but one afternoon he showed up by my truck as I was heading out. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Sure," I said, tossing my gear bag into the back seat. He looked uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot. I didn't know if I should say anything, but I thought you ought to know. I leaned against the side of the truck. "What is it?" "Lydia," he said. "Things with Daniel, they're not what she thought." I didn't say anything. "They're fighting. A lot. He's always traveling for work. Barely makes time for her. Apparently, she brings him coffee at his office like some kind of assistant. She's trying to hold it together, but it's all falling apart." A long silence hung between us. "Last week, she showed up at my desk," Luke added. Eyes all red. "Said she missed stability. Said Daniel feels distant." I rubbed the back of my neck. "She say anything about me?" He looked down. "Yeah. She asked if you were seeing anyone. I told her I didn't know. But I could tell, she regrets it." "She should," I said, not harshly, just honest. Over the next 2 weeks, Lydia showed up at my office twice. First time, she lingered near reception, said she just wanted to talk. I told her I was busy. Second time, she brought a photo album from our wedding and asked if I remembered our first dance. "I remember a lot of things," I said. "Some I try to forget." She looked like she wanted to cry but didn't. I watched her walk out both times without saying much more. Meanwhile, the proposal for the Wave Energy project picked up traction. My prototype sketches were approved by engineering leads, and a few weeks later, I got the call. A firm in Singapore, Clean Horizon Marine, wanted to meet in person. The offer came in fast. A full-time contract, relocation package, and a lead role in developing a revolutionary tidal grid system. It was the kind of opportunity you only get once. I said yes. I spent my evenings clearing out my apartment, boxing up books, selling off old tools I wouldn't need. For the first time in months, I felt light. Like I was finally leaving something heavy behind. Luke kept sending updates. "She's still trying with Daniel," he said one night over beers. "But he barely looks at her. Always on his laptop. Talks to her like a coworker." I nodded. "That's who she picked. You ever think about taking her back?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. No. Because by then, I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. The farewell party was never supposed to be dramatic. It was a quiet gathering thrown by the firm, a rooftop space in downtown Seattle, all glass rails and string lights swaying in the breeze. Just a few close colleagues, a catered buffet, and a few speeches to toast my new role in Singapore. I wore a fitted gray shirt and jeans, casual but sharp. Mark stood beside me near the railing, sipping a beer and nodding along to someone's story about a dive site that went sideways. I was finally starting to feel like myself again. Then I saw her. She was downstairs, outside the building, arguing with security. Lydia. She was wearing the same navy blue dress she'd worn on our first date. Her hair curled the same way. She even had on the little silver necklace I'd bought her after our second month together. It wasn't subtle. It was staged. Mark noticed her at the same time I did. "Is that?" "Yeah," I muttered. Lydia was holding something in her hand. A photo album, maybe. I couldn't tell from where I stood. She pointed up toward the rooftop, voice rising, clearly demanding to be let in. Security shook their heads. I watched as she argued, then backed off, then marched straight into the lobby, ignoring them completely. Mark put down his beer. "Do you want me to handle this?" "No," I said, exhaling. "Let's see what she does." 5 minutes later, the elevator chimed. Lydia stepped out, smiling like she'd just walked into a movie scene. Heads turned. Conversation stopped. She walked right up to me. "Thomas," she said, breathless. "I need to talk to you." I stepped back. "This isn't the place." She held up the album. "Please. Just 5 minutes. I brought this. I've been thinking about everything. Every moment we had." I saw the confusion on my coworkers' faces. A few pretended not to stare. Others didn't even try. Mark stepped forward. "You need to leave." "I'm not talking to you," she snapped. "This is between me and Thomas." "No," I said calmly. "It's not. Not anymore." She blinked, clearly not expecting that. "You made your decision, Lydia," I continued. "You walked out. You said you needed space to figure out your feelings. You figured them out, with someone else." "But it wasn't real," she said quickly. "I was scared. I thought. Scared people don't hide affairs and ask for space after a honeymoon." She looked like she'd been slapped. Her voice cracked. "I made a mistake." Mark cut in, stepping between us. "You made a choice," he said. "You chose someone who couldn't hold your attention for more than 3 months. And now that it's not what you thought, you're trying to rewrite the ending." "Mark." "No," he said, firm. You don't get to paint yourself as the lost lover now. Not after what you did. Lydia's face crumpled. The photo album slipped from her hands and landed on the floor with a soft thud. I just want another chance, she whispered. I looked around at the people I worked with, the ones who'd stood by me while I climbed out of that mess. Then I looked at Lydia. I'm leaving in 4 days, I said. And nothing that happens tonight will change that. She covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. When Mark reached down to hand her the album, she didn't take it. He turned to her gently. It's time to go. Security appeared behind her, and she didn't fight it this time. Just nodded, face red, tears streaming. As the elevator doors closed, Lydia looked back one last time. But I didn't move. Because that chapter had ended. And everyone in the room knew it. I didn't have to do anything. Lydia's perfect new life unraveled all on its own. It started with a call from Luke while I was finishing up the last round of paperwork before the move. You're not going to believe this, he said, half laughing. Daniel's been seeing someone else. I didn't say anything. I just let him talk. Olivia, he added. Yeah, that Olivia. Lydia's best friend. Her maid of honor. The one who used to trash talk Daniel every chance she got, right up until Lydia got back together with him. They've been sneaking around for weeks, Luke continued. Lydia caught them texting one night. She flipped out, followed Olivia to her office the next morning and, get this, confronted her in front of the whole team. I leaned back in my chair. Let me guess. Someone filmed it. Oh yeah, Luke said. It's already made the rounds. Olivia's been fired. Daniel dumped Lydia the same night. Said he needed space. I should have felt vindicated. I didn't. It just felt like the final nail in something that was already long dead. Over the next week, Luke kept the updates coming like little headlines. Lydia moved back in with her parents. She's off social media. Deleted everything. Started therapy, apparently. She's not the same, he said one night over the phone. Quieter. Like she finally hit the wall. I hope she gets help, I said. And I meant it. Because by then, I didn't want revenge. I just wanted peace. I had already sold off what little was left of our shared life. Gave away the couch, sold the dishes, donated the throw pillows she obsessed over. I kept one thing, a photo of us from the honeymoon, tucked in a drawer. Not because I missed her, just because it reminded me of how far I'd come. Luke and I grabbed dinner one last time the night before my flight. He looked tired. Years of watching his sister self-destruct, I guess, but there was relief in his voice. You sure about Singapore? He asked. Never been more sure. He nodded. She won't let this go. You know that, right? She already did, I said. She just doesn't realize it yet. We clinked beer bottles and ate in silence for a while. Later that night, back in my apartment, I zipped up the last suitcase, tossed the keys on the counter, and stood at the window for a long time, watching the city I used to love. Lydia had made her choice. Daniel had revealed himself. Olivia had played her hand. And all of it had finally collapsed in on itself, right where it belonged. I didn't need to win. I just needed to walk away. SeaTac was packed. Loudspeaker announcements, rolling suitcases, crying kids, all of it blending into a background hum as I checked in for my flight to Singapore. I was early, on purpose. I wanted time to breathe before this next chapter started. My gate was halfway down the terminal, near a big glass wall that overlooked the runway. I found an empty seat, set my bags down, and pulled out my boarding pass. Then I heard it, my name. Thomas. I looked up. Lydia was pushing through the crowd, breathless, hair a mess, tears already brimming. She was holding a photo album tied to her chest, the same one from the rooftop. Behind her, Robert followed, his face grim. His long strides were catching up to her fast. Thomas, please, she called again. I stood up, not to talk, just to be ready. She reached me, chest heaving, and shoved the album into my hands. Look through it, she begged. Please. Just look. I didn't open it. Lydia. No, she said quickly. Just listen. I know I made a mistake. I know I hurt you. But I didn't see it then. I thought I was chasing something I needed. I didn't realize what I already had until it was gone. People were starting to look. A flight attendant at a nearby counter glanced over. I caught a few raised eyebrows, even a couple of whispers. I don't care what people think, she said. I just want one last chance. Come home with me. Please. We can fix it. Robert stepped up behind her. That's enough. Lydia turned. Dad, please. No, he said, calm but stern. You're embarrassing yourself. And you're embarrassing me. She looked like she'd been slapped. You brought me here. I came to stop you, he said. Not to support this. She turned back to me, eyes wide, broken. You don't understand, Thomas. I don't have anything left. That's not true, I said. You have time. You have help. You have therapy. She stepped closer. But I don't have you. I looked at her for a long moment. I could still see pieces of the woman I married. But those pieces were buried under choices that I didn't make. You had me, I said. And you let me go. I handed her the album back. Take care of yourself. She clutched it to her chest like a child holding a stuffed toy. Her lip trembled, but she didn't say anything else. Robert gently took her arm and turned her away. She didn't resist this time. As they disappeared into the crowd, I heard a new voice beside me. "You weren't kidding," Ava said, smiling as she adjusted the strap of her laptop bag. "You really do have dramatic exes." I smiled back. "Just the one." She tilted her head toward the gate. "Come on. I'll show you the best hawker stalls in Singapore when we land." We boarded together. Lydia didn't look back. And for the first time in a long, long time, neither did I.